The capsule shuddered as it pierced the atmosphere of Viridian 9, a planet alive with colors that no human eye had ever catalogued. Rivers of liquid light wound through towering crystalline forests. Mountains shimmered like polished gems, reflecting the twin suns in fractured spectrums. Clouds rolled in slow, heavy swirls, carrying the faint scent of ozone and metallic minerals. Carter Hayes, veteran human trader and explorer, gripped the capsule's control rail, feeling the tremor run through the hull. Years of interstellar travel had taught him one truth. No amount of preparation could ready a human for the first sight of an alien world in all its chaotic brilliance. As the capsule's landing struts touched the ground with a muted clang, Carter's eyes scanned the surrounding settlement. Viridian 9's trading hub sprawled across the riverbed, a lattice of platforms, metallic walkways, and glowing alien signage that hummed with quiet energy. Viridians, tall and lean, moved with deliberate, precise steps. Their metallic-hued skin caught and fractured the light, eyes like pools of liquid onyx, reflecting every shimmer. Carter had learned their language in pieces, clicks, hums, melodic tones, an intricate symphony of sound. He did not yet claim fluency, but he had learned enough to survive, enough to trade, enough to understand when a pause meant suspicion, or when a gaze carried unspoken warning. And today, a pause, sharp and small, pulled his attention. A tiny figure, no taller than a human toddler, approached the market stall. Her silver skin had dulled from wear, tiny scratches along her arms telling silent stories of survival. In her hands, she clutched 3 rusty coins. Her large, dark eyes met his, and Carter felt that familiar, unsettling human instinct. This child was carrying more than metal. She carried hope and fear. She raised her voice, trembling, melodic. "Mister, is this enough to buy a dad?" Carter froze, one hand hovering over the worn counter. 3 rusty coins. The words hung in the air, impossible and piercing. "You want a father?" he asked slowly, leaning closer, unsure if he had interpreted her speech correctly. She nodded, clutching the coins like they were lifelines. A soft metallic clink sounded as they tapped together. Across the bustling market, Viridian adults observed. Tall, armored, and imposing, they whispered among themselves in rhythmic clicks and hums. To them, this was absurd. A human, alone, entertaining the notion of parenting a child not his own? Preposterous. One of the older Viridians murmured, "They will reject him. Humans cannot be counted upon." Carter's gaze did not waver. He saw the loneliness mirrored in the child's expression. He saw need. He saw courage, quiet, fragile, but unmistakable. He knelt to her level, careful not to intimidate. The market noise seemed to fade. 3 coins, and you think I could buy love?" he said, voice gentle. The girl's head tilted, small shoulders trembling. "I tried," she whispered. Carter covered her hands with his, holding the coins lightly. "Some things aren't for sale. Love, a dad, that comes from choosing to care, not from paying." The Viridians gasped. A human, ignoring hierarchy and expectation, speaking directly to a child, acting without calculation. "But I need one," the girl murmured. "You already have one now," Carter said, voice firm yet warm. "I can try if you'll let me." She hesitated, then nodded slowly, her eyes flickering with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Carter rose, brushing off dust from his sleeves, while the girl's small hand remained tucked lightly in his. Around them, the Viridians continued to murmur, their long-held assumptions faltering. "Humans, they do not behave as expected," one whispered. And just like that, a quiet, extraordinary truth began to ripple across the settlement. Humans did not follow the rules of expectation. They acted on something deeper: courage, compassion, choice. Carter glanced at the alien child again. "We'll figure this out together," he said softly. And for the first time in this bustling alien marketplace, the impossible felt possible. The marketplace hummed with life. Alien merchants called in melodic clicks, hawking strange metals, glowing fruits, and devices that whispered with energy. Viridians moved with a precision that seemed almost choreographed, scanning for threats, bargains, or advantage. But all of that noise all of that order, could not mask the small, fragile scene unfolding near the human stall. Lyra, the alien girl, stood clutching her 3 rusty coins. Her tiny fingers were white around the edges from gripping them so tightly. Her eyes, wide and liquid, flicked nervously between Carter and the watching Viridians. The adults around her, stoic, precise, imposing, shifted uneasily. A group of warriors, taller than any human by 2 full heads, stood just behind the girl. Their armor caught the sunlight streaming through the lattice of the station, glinting in subtle golds and silvers. Each movement they made was deliberate, controlled, measured. "They will fail," one of the warriors clicked to another, voice low but certain. "A human cannot be counted upon. Not for what matters." Carter heard the words, though he did not flinch. Instead, he studied the girl. He could see the hope, the fear, the daring spark that had led her to this moment. A 3-coin plea, tiny in its physicality, yet monumental in emotional weight. He knelt to her level again, keeping his voice soft. "You don't need coins for this. Not to have someone care. That comes from choosing to care." The Viridians blinked, or the closest approximation they had to blinking in shock. Humans were not supposed to operate like this. They were supposed to calculate risk, measure reward, consider status. Carter's words were not calculations. They were commitment. "But I tried," Lyra whispered, trembling, her voice just above a hum. "Then you've already done enough," Carter said, smiling gently. "And now, I can try too." Her large eyes studied him, searching for duplicity, for motive, for reason. She found none. She saw only sincerity. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Carter's gaze lifted, meeting the eyes of the watching Viridians. Murmurs ran through the crowd. "Do you see?" one whispered. He chooses to care. He acts without calculation. They save without expectation." It was as if a stone had shifted in the minds of all who observed. The rules they had held as absolute, the measures of trust, power, and value, were breaking. A single human, faced with nothing but 3 rusty coins and a child's desperate plea, had dared to act without strategy. Carter's hand rested lightly on the girl's shoulder, an anchor. The movement was small, but the Viridians understood its weight. Here was bravery not defined by strength, nor cleverness, nor domination. Here was bravery defined by moral choice. The girl looked up at him, tears welling. "You will be my dad?" she asked, voice trembling but determined. Carter smiled, soft but firm. "Only if you want me to be. Only if we promise to figure it out together." The murmurs grew louder. A few younger Viridians, eyes wide, tilted their heads as if trying to understand something completely foreign. They whispered, "They humans, they are not like us." Indeed, humans were unlike any species the Viridians had ever encountered. They did not act solely for gain, for survival, or for hierarchy. They acted because they chose to act. And that choice, small as it might seem, carried weight heavier than any armor or weapon. Carter stood fully now, still keeping his hand near hers, and gestured toward the stall. "Come on. Let's see if we can make today a little better than yesterday." The girl hesitated, then stepped forward. Her coins clinked against the counter, forgotten in the gravity of the moment. For a fraction of a heartbeat, the entire marketplace seemed to pause, suspended between disbelief and awe. And then life continued, calls, movement, the distant whir of hovering crafts. But something fundamental had shifted. Humans had acted without calculation, without hierarchy, without expectation, and in doing so, had begun to teach a quiet, almost imperceptible lesson to the entire settlement. Courage and compassion were stronger than power, if only one had the will to act. Carter's eyes swept across the onlookers, meeting those of the skeptics. He did not speak, but the message was clear. Humans were not predictable. Humans did not follow expectation. Humans, at their best, defined their own code, and their code began with care. Days passed, each one blending into the next, yet the small acts of humanity grew heavier in significance than any grand ceremony or political maneuver. Carter and Lyra began to settle into a quiet rhythm. The marketplace, once bustling and indifferent, had become a place of small connections, smiles, and shared warmth. Carter taught Lyra small things, human games, the feel of warmth from a gentle touch, the art of laughter unafraid. She mimicked him, stumbling at first, then with growing confidence. And yet, each lesson was more than play. Each smile was a thread weaving bonds that no coin, no title, no law could replicate. The Viridians watched. The adults murmured, skeptics whispering in melodic clicks. Humans, they are reckless. They risk without reason. They care beyond calculation. Carter, meanwhile, did not notice their scrutiny. He noticed Lyra's eyes, how they sparkled when she discovered something new, how they softened when she learned the word friend. And he noticed the other children around her, alien and human alike, slowly gravitating toward her small orbit. One afternoon, as the twin suns dipped low, Carter saw a young Viridian stumble near a pile of unstable scrap, an accident waiting to happen. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward, catching the child just before a heavy panel toppled. The crowd gasped. Adults froze, hesitant, calculating risk and strategy. But Carter's action was instinctive. It required no deliberation, no reward, only choice. Only care. The child, eyes wide, clutched at him. "Thank you," they whispered in clicks. Carter simply smiled. "Anytime. That's what we do." From the shadows, a group of warriors observed, their expressions unreadable. One leaned toward another. They act without expectation. They save simply because it is right. It was incomprehensible to them, yet undeniable. Humans did not measure bravery or compassion by protocol or hierarchy. They measured it by the courage of the heart. That evening, as the settlement lights shimmered across the metallic streets, Carter and Lyra walked together along the riverbank. The small alien girl carried a half-melted holographic toy, her silver skin catching the soft glow of neon cyan reflections from the water. I thought maybe humans only cared for themselves," Lyra admitted softly, her voice trembling. Carter paused, looking down at her. "Some do. But most of us, we care because it matters. And sometimes that's enough to change everything." She tilted her head, considering. "Even for a stranger?" "Especially for a stranger," he replied. A soft breeze rippled through the crystalline reeds lining the river. The water shimmered in a cascade of light and shadow, reflecting both the alien structures and the small human duo walking along the bank. The juxtaposition was clear. Fragile humans, small against a world of alien precision, yet capable of immense impact. Later that night, the marketplace was quiet, but the impression lingered. Viridians whispered again. They humans, their courage is not a strength, but of choice. Their actions cannot be predicted, yet they inspire. Even among the younger generation, curious eyes peered from behind corners, watching the human who had risked nothing yet given everything. They did not yet understand him, but they felt the weight of his example. For Carter it was ordinary, teaching, helping, laughing with a child. For the galaxy, however, it was extraordinary. Humanity was not measured in weapons, fleets, or calculated power. It was measured in the courage to act rightly when no one commanded it. And with each passing day, Lyra's laughter grew louder. She ran freely among the stalls, sharing stories of her human dad with the other children. And though the Viridians remained cautious, observing from afar, they could not deny the pull of this small, unassuming human's influence. The ripple had begun. A single act of care, a simple choice. And already, the settlement felt a little brighter, a little safer, a little more human. The Festival of Crystals was the highlight of the settlement year, a time when Viridians and visitors alike celebrated the planet's strange beauty. Giant crystalline spires refracted light across the plaza, casting rainbows in every direction. Floating lanterns hummed with soft energy, illuminating walkways and casting long, dramatic shadows. Carter and Lyra had arrived early. The human had promised the girl she could see everything, the glowing towers, the rivers of light, the alien performers suspended in midair by energy fields. Her wide eyes mirrored every sparkle, every reflection, as if trying to capture it all at once. And yet, amid the celebration, a danger simmered unnoticed. The crystalline river that ran near the plaza had begun to swell, fed by an underground thermal current. Children played along the banks, chasing each other between the luminous stones, oblivious to the rising water. A sudden roar of rushing liquid split the air. A wall of shimmering water surged toward the children. Panic erupted. Viridian adults froze. They calculated, debated, hesitated. Who would move first? Who should take responsibility? Risk was measured, and hesitation was measured as necessary. Carter acted. He lunged forward, ignoring the instinct to measure, to pause, to calculate. He plunged into the rushing flood, scooping children from a river with precise, fearless movements. Lyra, small but determined, waded alongside him, helping where she could, guided by instinct and trust. The Viridians gasped, watching with eyes wide. The humans were exposing themselves to danger, not for honor, not for gain, but for care, for love, for choice. One young warrior whispered to another, "They save for the sake of saving. They care without calculation." Carter's arms were strong and steady. He lifted a small Viridian child onto his shoulder, then another, and another. Each rescue required timing, courage, and instinct. But above all, he acted without hesitation. Time slowed, as if the universe itself had paused to observe. Water splashed, sunlight fractured through the crystalline river. Neon glows from the festival reflected across faces wet with fear and relief. The flood receded, leaving children safe on the elevated platform. They clung to their rescuers, crying, laughing, shaking from adrenaline. Lyra hugged Carter tightly, her silver hair dripping, her large eyes filled with awe. The Viridians watched silently, a profound shift overtaking them. The whispers became murmurs of respect, disbelief, and understanding. Humans, they act for the right reason. Not for hierarchy, not for calculation, not for gain. For love, for care, simply because they choose to. Carter stood on the platform, dripping wet, carrying the last child to safety. Lyra's hand was in his, small and trusting. The crowd of Viridians, 100 strong, observed not a conqueror, not a warrior, but something far more extraordinary, a human. A human whose courage was measured not by power, but by choice. One of the older Viridians, a commander who had fought countless battles, tilted their head. We have underestimated them," they admitted quietly. Not in strength, but in heart. The crowd murmured agreement. Across the settlement, every witness felt it. Humanity was not like any other species in the galaxy. They did not calculate risk for advantage. They did not act only for survival. They acted because it was right. And in that moment, Carter realized something profound himself. This was larger than any individual act. This was a ripple that would reach beyond one riverbank, beyond one festival. It was proof that one human, acting out of compassion, could shift the perception of an entire species. Lyra, dripping and exhausted, looked up at him. "You saved them all," she whispered. Carter smiled, brushing water from his hair. "We saved them together. And next time, we'll do it again if we have to." The Viridians remained silent, absorbing, learning. Their eyes, once calculating, now reflected something they had never truly seen: the raw, uncompromising courage of humanity. And for the first time, the aliens of Viridian 9 understood something the galaxy had not yet fully grasped. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in that unpredictability was a power far greater than mere force. A power born of choice, of heart, of compassion. The Festival of Crystals continued, glittering and alive, but its meaning had shifted. It was no longer only a celebration of Viridian 9. It had become a testament to the extraordinary capacity of humans to inspire awe simply by choosing to care. The flood had passed. The children were safe. Laughter rippled through the settlement, mingling with the faint hum of alien machinery and the glimmering reflections of crystalline towers. Wet, exhausted, but unharmed, the little ones clung to Carter, their faces flushed with a mix of relief and wonder. Lyra, silver hair plastered to her face from the rushing water, looked up at him with awe-filled eyes. You are my dad now, right? She whispered, voice trembling with hope. Carter knelt down, letting her hand rest in his. Only if you want me to be, he said, smiling warmly. We'll figure this out together. Across the plaza, the Viridians watched in silence. The adults, stoic, precise, and deliberate, absorbed what they had witnessed. These humans, so small against the towering crystalline structures, had acted not out of necessity or self-interest, but out of choice, out of care, out of heart. One of the senior warriors tilted their head, a rare motion of contemplation. We underestimated them, they said softly to another. Not their strength, their compassion. Their courage is not in weapons, but in heart. Others murmured in agreement, some nodding slowly, absorbing a truth that had eluded them for centuries. The human before them had done what no strategy, no authority, no hierarchy could enforce. He had inspired a lesson through action. Even the younger Viridians watching from the sidelines began to imitate what they had observed. Small gestures of help, of care, of attention to those in need. In subtle ways, the ripple of one human's choice began to spread. Carter carried Lyra to higher ground, her small hands clutching his arm for balance. Below, the 3 rusty coins, once symbols of a desperate plea, lay forgotten in the mud. They were no longer needed. The child had received something far more valuable, the promise of care, the reality of connection, and the demonstration that humans do not act for gain, but for what is right. Carter's eyes swept the crowd. Children laughed. Merchants resumed their calls. The plaza glimmered under the twin suns' fading light, casting long shadows across the settlement. And the Viridians, for the first time, truly saw what humans could be. Not conquerors, not rulers, not mere traders or explorers, but beacons of choice, courage, and compassion. Carter knelt beside Lyra once more. See that? They're learning from you, from us, he said softly. Small things matter. Every choice matters. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Lyra leaned against him, silver hair glinting in the fading light. I want to be like you, she murmured. You already are, Carter said. Every time you choose to care, every time you help someone without expecting anything, that's human strength. The Viridians' whispers filled the space around them, no longer of doubt, but of awe. They save without expectation. They inspire without trying. They teach without words. Carter looked up at the crystalline towers, the festival lights twinkling like stars reflected on the planet's surface. He realized that this moment, small as it seemed in the grand expanse of the galaxy, was proof. Proof that humanity's greatness was not in fleets, weapons, or authority, but in their ability to choose compassion when it mattered most. And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the plaza in a warm, golden glow, a quiet understanding passed through the settlement. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. Yet, in their choices, they were unstoppable. The festival continued, but its meaning had shifted. It was no longer only a celebration of Viridian 9. It was a testament to the extraordinary capacity of humans to act with heart, courage, and uncalculated bravery. And for Carter, holding the hand of a small, trusting alien girl, it was enough. Enough to know that one human, one choice, could change the world around them. Night fell on Viridian 9. The twin moons rose over the crystalline towers, bathing the settlement in silvery light. The festival of crystals had ended, but its resonance lingered. Lanterns floated above the plazas, reflecting off glassy surfaces and casting long, soft shadows. The water in the river shimmered faintly, as if it, too, had absorbed the courage of the day. Carter sat beside Lyra on a small terrace, their legs dangling over the edge. The alien girl's eyes sparkled, still wide with wonder, still processing what had happened. You saved so many today, she whispered, voice soft, almost reverent. Carter smiled, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. We saved them together. That's what humans do. We don't wait for permission. We don't calculate reward. We act because it's right. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Lyra leaned against him, the warmth of her small frame grounding him in the quiet night. Around them, distant lights twinkled, and the faint hum of Viridian machinery wove through the silence. Across the settlement, alien observers reflected on what they had witnessed. Senior warriors, stoic and battle-hardened, murmured to one another, "Humans, they are not predictable. Their strength is not in weapons, not in fleets, but in heart. Their choices, their courage, it reshapes what we thought we knew." Younger Viridians, who had watched wide-eyed from corners and rooftops, began small acts of kindness. A hand offered here, a helping grip there. The ripple of humanity, embodied in one human's courage, was spreading, subtle, quiet, unstoppable. Carter looked up at the twin moons. "Lyra," he said softly, "the universe is full of rules, expectations, and things we think we must follow. But sometimes, the right choice is the one no one expects. That's what makes humans human." Lyra tilted her head. "So, it's okay to be different." "More than okay," Carter replied. "It's extraordinary." The Viridians, too, began to understand. A small truth had been revealed. Humans were fragile, yes, but in their choices lay strength. In their compassion, a galaxy-wide lesson had taken root. The child had asked for a father with 3 rusty coins. And in that simple act, humans had shown that love, care, and bravery were currencies no one could measure, but everyone could witness. For the first time, the aliens of Viridian 9, and perhaps the galaxy beyond, saw what humans were capable of when they acted from heart rather than expectation. They did not conquer. They did not calculate. They inspired. And Carter, holding a small hand in his, realized that all the journeys, all the hardships, all the quiet choices made across the stars had led to this moment. One human, one child, one act of courage, proving that humanity's true power was something the galaxy had never fully understood until now. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. Merry Christmas. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.